Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cuyahoga Heights Board of Education work session on November 6th at 6 p.m. Will the treasurer please call the roll?
Mrs. Decker?
Here.
Mrs. Zetter?
Here.
Ms. Prowse?
Here.
Mr. Dobbins?
Here.
Mr. Souchaki?
Here, 5 present, none absent. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. Board values and encourages public comment on education issues, and anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public comments portion of the meeting. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available for review on the website, and please silence your cell phones during the meeting. At this point, we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Section 2, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbin.
I'll second.
Okay. Second by, I'm going to do it again.
Oh, Mrs. Decker.
Decca.
Come on.
I don't know why I do that. I apologize. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter?
Aye.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Moving into section 3, we have a public hearing and information to discuss the district calendar. I'll turn it over to our superintendent.
Yeah, this is just a continuation of what we did last meeting. We're required to have that public hearing for a period of 1 month before adopting the district calendar. So I've gotten very little feedback so far, but it's still going to be out there, and we'll look to adopt it at the next board meeting.
Just one question. So remind me again how many school days are slated in this 25-26 calendar and how many are required from the state?
Yeah, so the state doesn't look at days anymore. They look at hours.
Okay.
At the high school level, it's 1,001 hours, which is equivalent to approximately 152 or 153 of our days. I'd have to multiply 6.5 or divide 6.5 by 1,001. So we exceed that. I believe teachers have 187.5 days. That's per the contract. And then our students, I believe our students that are 179 days, which is in excess of the minimum required. Again, so if we're, just for convenience, if we needed 154 days, we're 25 days over that, which is 5 weeks of school. So, I know we're still classically conditioned to think in terms of calamity days and 5 calamity days and things like that, but that really doesn't exist anymore. It's about hours. 910 hours at the younger grade levels, and even if there's half-day kindergarten, it's down to, I believe, 455. So,
Okay.
yeah, we're beyond the minimum by quite a bit.
So then if those calamity days were to occur, then you don't deduct days, you deduct hours from the
Yep.
total?
Yep,
Okay.
hours of instruction, and then if you go below your minimum hours of instruction, then you have to make up that time.
Okay.
How do our hours compare to other districts?
Well, again, it's based on length of your day. So there's, when I was looking, last spring at different school districts, I think the longest school day is Orange maybe has 7.5-hour days, because you can't count recess and you can't count lunchtime in that total. I think ours is pretty average. That's what I found when I was looking at other districts. I've got it in a book somewhere about 35 districts in the area, what their instructional hours are. So I think we're right. Most still stick to that 180 days. That number, again, is historical.
Okay.
And we fluctuate between 178 and 180 for students, depending on when certain holidays fall in the year. So, and this, next year's calendar is one that goes, kind of like this year, it goes into June. And that's, you have to decide if you want to start on August 11th or if you want to end on June 5th. And that's kind of where we've been. Eventually it will reset back to we'll be done in May. And, who knows, someday we might have year-round schooling. It is Ohio, and we don't know which way things are going to go, but some states around us do year-round schooling as well. So But that's not in our discussions, so.
Good.
Parents don't need to freak out about vacation time and things like that.
Test to see if anyone's listening.
Yeah, just testing, see who's out there. No, good questions, though.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Moving on to section 4, comments from the public. No one has signed up. So moving on to section 5, presentations, and we'll start with the 5-year forecast by Mr. Muccio.
Mr. President, tonight we have a special guest. We have Mr. David Seed, our district legal counsel here. He's going to provide an update. And before we really dive into that, maybe David, you could touch base on the tips that we have, and I can bring up the forecast. So if we look at our, oh, David.
Let me hand this out first.
Yep. And then I'm going to also put on the screen, if everybody's able to, one thing I did different is instead of printing the forecast, I figured save some trees, so it's all online for us to pull up. So if we're able to go to page 38 of the forecast, David's going to hit lead off and go through our tips that we have.
Thank you, David.
And that is page 38. And I'll make that screen bigger.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. I've had the honor to work with you for many years on tax valuation issues and exemptions. Let me just give a little bit of background, if that's okay. As we all know from getting our home property taxes, all property is taxable. We get values. The county just sent updates this past. The county just sent updates probably 2 months ago for the tax year 24 valuations, and those will be the taxes you'll pay next year in calendar year 25, and that same value will be in effect for up to 3 years for your home. It's the same with commercial properties. And most of the revenue for the school board is generated from local property taxes. Like nearly all of your revenue is from local property taxes. With few exceptions, you collect revenue, in particular on all the industrial properties, the warehouses, manufacturing properties in the 3 communities that comprise the school district. Now, there are a couple exceptions for why a property will not be taxable. We're currently in a building right now that's a public building for education use. City Hall across the street for Cuyahoga Heights is a public building, so it's exempt from taxes. A church, public facilities are exempt from taxes in most cases, so no property taxes are paid. There are a couple more exceptions that are used for economic development, and we have all 3 of them with this school district. One is called tax increment financing. It's technically an exemption of property, but the taxpayer will make full property tax payments on the property. It's commonly used for economic development by a township, village, or a city to pay for public improvements. It's one purpose for a TIF. And the other is to assist a private developer to pay for the improvements. I use the analogy of a TIF. Imagine if you put an addition on your house, and let's say your house, you put an addition on for $50,000. And to help pay for the addition, you know your property value is going to go up by $50,000, and you have to pay the county an extra $1,000 a year of property taxes. What if that extra $1,000 of property taxes could be pledged to the bank to help pay for the renovation or addition to your house, essentially having the $1,000 that you paid to the county treasurer sent back to you or sent to your bank to help pay for the home improvement. That would be great, because then you'd have to bring less money every year for your payment on the additional mortgage or home equity line of credit that you have on the home. So for commercial development, in particular in Valley View, in the 6 examples I'm going to discuss, the village of Valley View is using the additional value from these projects to generate revenue for the village to use for public improvements. Example of one I worked on, and I'm going to discuss it first. It's just outside of your district. It's Topgolf. I think you all have been to Topgolf at Independence. So when City of Independence had to expand the road, Rockside Woods Boulevard, they had to pay for the cost of expanding the road to Broadview Road. Not Broadview Road, but right. They had to expand the cost to take it to 21. And what they did was, the city council passed legislation for tax increment financing. So the additional value from Topgolf, a portion of the property taxes generated from Topgolf are used every year to pay for the debt service that was issued by the city to pay for that road at Independence, with that school board, Independence Schools, being made whole. So on $100 of property taxes, let's say $55 goes to the school board. The school board will receive $55. The $45 of taxes that would have gone to the county, to the library, to the Port Authority, to the City of Independence in that case, are diverted. Instead of going to those non-BOE entities, they're diverted to a city fund to use to pay for the debt service on public improvements. Now, what Valley View did 2 years ago is Valley View enacted tax increment financing for 6 projects near Canal Road and Granger in particular, and elsewhere in Valley View, where the village is attempting to capture the additional property taxes, not the property taxes on the land that existed prior to the construction, but the additional property taxes from the appreciation of the land and the new construction, if any, on the property, for use by the village for public improvements in the village, either for those specific projects or for public improvements throughout the village of Valley View. The 6 TIFs that were enacted by the village are school-friendly TIFs. The village can approve a TIF for up to 10 years and 75% to exempt 70 or divert 75% of the additional value without your approval. So that's why they never had to come to the school board for approval of the TIFs. Or there's another exception, if the TIF is school-friendly. So they never came to you for approval of the 6 TIFs because the 6 TIFs were school-friendly TIFs where the Cuyahoga Heights Local School District is held harmless. You're paid the exact amount of money you would have received in the absence of the TIF. So if the village had wanted to pass a school-friendly TIF, they did not need to come to you to approve the TIF. And if the village wanted to pass up to a 10-year or 75% TIF, leaving you with 25% for 10 years, they could have done that and left you with no revenue. That's often done in townships and other areas where, townships cannot levy an income or payroll tax. So they will try to capture the additional revenue at the expense of the local school board. But in the case of Valley View, the 6 TIFs that were approved are school-friendly TIFs. So there's no financial impact or no negative financial impact on the school board. So on the spreadsheet I provided, or the report I provide to you, identify the parcel numbers on the left column. The name of the owner is in the second column to the left. What's called the historical base value, that's the land value prior to any improvements or appreciation of the land. You receive 100% revenue on the historical base value. The base value totals $35,296,700. So the school board and all taxing entities, the library, parks, county, the village, receive full revenue on the base value. Then the next column is property value for this most recent year, 23 pay 24, it's $61 million. And the difference between the two, the $26 million, that's what's called the incremental value. That's the TIF value. That's what's captured by the TIF is the incremental value. Think of the cream in the middle of an Oreo cookie. That's the diversion. And in the case of two of the projects, there is actually a TIF value. The Scannell properties, which I think has been built, and one other one. And at 29.5 effective mills, the district this year received $269,196. Because it's a school-friendly TIF, it's the same amount of money you would have received had there not been a TIF. So in your treasurer's forecast, what he has to account for, and the forecast that you're going to approve, is there's a separate line item that's provided by the county for TIFs twice a year with the settlement, and identifies these 6 TIFs and identifies the payment that's made to the school board as a separate settlement item from the regular semi-annual settlement. Is everyone with me on TIFs? So fortunately, you're not dealing with the conflicts that other communities face with TIFs, where in order to, or let's think of large economic development projects where a school board is asked to make significant concessions in order for the project to go forward. You've not been faced with that situation with a TIF. Now, there's 2 other types of incentives, and they're the traditional tax abatements. One is a enterprise zone, and the other is a community reinvestment area. Enterprise zone, in both of them, the purpose, and it's also with TIFs. Why do villages or municipalities enact TIFs, enterprise zones, CRAs? It's to generate payroll taxes. That's their bread and butter. Your bread and butter is property taxes. So, Charter Steel in Cuyahoga Heights. On 4 occasions, the village has enacted enterprise zone abatements for Charter Steel to encourage Charter Steel to expand the property, where they provide Charter Steel with an exemption on the improvements for a period of years. In the case of the 2 most recent additions, where they cut the length bar mill and the special bar line, the school board in 2016 and in 2022 approved 15-year 100% exemptions for the additional improvements. So let's say they build a 50,000 square foot building on the site. All of the value, the additional value, is exempt. You do not receive any additional property taxes. But because the terms of the enterprise zone exceeded 75% of the value requested, school board approval was necessary, and we were able to negotiate a compensation agreement, which provided 2 items of compensation to the school board with Charter Steel. It's the same for both additions. One is that Charter Steel makes a payment to the school board of 25% of the revenue the school board would regularly receive. So if the school board were to receive, hypothetically, $100,000, Charter is paying you $25,000. In addition, the village has to share 50% of the payroll taxes, the additional payroll taxes created by the project. So in the most recent year, the district receives $33,505 from the 25% payment and $60,869.91 from sharing of payroll taxes. So these are 2 items that are not on the settlement statement that you receive from the county, but your treasurer has to account for them in his forecasting model. What your treasurer is also going to have to anticipate is a new addition put on the property this past year, or in 22 and 23, for the special bar line. So next year, the district will start to receive some additional revenue, probably a similar amount to what was received under the cut-to-length bar mill. It's a similar size addition to the property. So, yes, the school board's giving up 75% of the additional revenue, but you are receiving 25%, plus you're receiving 50% of the payroll taxes. In some cases, in the experience with this district, the school boards come out ahead. So let's say that you gave up $75,000, but received $100,000 from sharing payroll taxes. That has occurred in the past. It just depends on the level of payroll at the property. Finally, Nidex Steel, in 2019 in Brooklyn Heights, the school board approved an abatement. This one was for 50% for 15 years, not 100%. So the school board receives 50% of normal revenue from the taxpayer. They pay taxes on the property, but at a level, the improvements of 50%. So if the property had a building value of $10 million, $5 million would be taxable and $5 million would be exempt. So that's a 50% tax break for Nidex Steel. Now, as compensation, what Brooklyn Heights agreed to do was to provide a compensation payment to the school board for the missing 50% in terms of sharing payroll taxes with the school board. So you end up being made whole. This also has to be accounted for by the treasurer in his 5-year forecast. Now, finally, maybe this will start to occur, maybe it won't. The number of abatements that currently exist are 2 right now, other than the TIFs. 10, 15 years ago, there were probably a dozen abatements, and they've all expired. When Brooklyn Heights in particular was being built out, the village offered tax abatements for a lot of the projects. And now there's a lack of new land. Maybe in the coming years, as interest rates decline, as the economy improves, the tool that's often used is tax abatements or TIFs. We've had a few situations in the past few years where developers have approached the district to seek assistance, and those projects have either fallen through or they went ahead and worked on the project without seeking assistance. Does anyone have any questions?
So these, Matt was just showing, these don't expire until tax year 2052, is that correct?
Yeah, so David, from,
The TIFs expire in
The TIFs.
30 years, yes.
In 30 years on the TIFs, okay. And is that value, the revenue, does that change? Do you expect that to change annually? That's why
Yes.
Matt's having a difficult time projecting out beyond just this past tax year?
Right now, for the coming year, I put on this list the tentative values of the county, which are very similar to the values for the prior year. What we do not know is, due to new construction going forward, that could change. But at least as of today, we don't know what the millage rate's going to be, although you passed a levy last year, that your levy will go into effect for the taxes paid in 24, for tax year 24 paid 25. So I discussed with Matt in forecasting, you're going to have to adjust what you received this past year and increase it by the anticipated percentage increase of taxes, for the coming year. Going forward into the future, the values will go up a little bit. Industrial properties did increase in value, but significantly different revenue than than what's listed here will not occur until there's really more new construction.
It looks like a few of them went down in value. Does that affect?
It's a slight reduction.
Okay.
And the ones like RLLD Realty, that's for vacant land. So the county just slightly adjusted the value of the land down. And with a few of these, yes.
With us losing that tangible personal property tax, this is a nice way to offset that, because we're losing what per year now?
About 200,000.
200,000 a year.
Well, with the school-friendly TIF, the advantage is, it's in particular for the village. They're able to capture the non-school property taxes. You call it a money grab, various things you could call it. It's a way for the village to capture property taxes that they can use for economic development. So, think of, again, with Topgolf. How do you pay for a road? In addition to all the employees and payroll and admissions tax at Topgolf, well, then how can we pay for a road? Well, by tipping the property. You keep independent schools whole in that case, but the non-independent school revenue can be diverted. In these 6 cases, and this is going to occur probably throughout, I anticipate for other economic development projects. This goes on in other communities. You TIF the property, it allows the village to capture the non-school revenue. The other type of TIF is called a private developer TIF. So instead of the village receiving the non-school revenue, the non-school revenue is simply returned back to the taxpayer. My analogy of you put an addition on your home and you get the additional taxes right back to you for your use to pay, whatever you want to use it for, to pay an additional loan. It's a means. Yes, it takes away money from the parks and the library and it does take money away from the village, but they're hoping that they will more than offset the loss of property taxes by the additional payroll taxes.
Are there TIFs that don't protect schools and you were kind of saying that before?
Correct.
Okay.
There are some that that would not protect the schools. You do not have any right now. But the village can, under Ohio law, enact a TIF up to 10 years without your approval, and importantly, to divert up to 75% of the additional value. So you see, take the example of the largest one here, Scano, $25 million. So what if they could say 75% of that additional value, the taxes on that additional value are going to be retained by either the village, or they're going to be returned back to the owner, and leaving the school board with 25%. They can go up to that level for 10 years without your approval. For good relations, let's just hope that they never do that, but they can do that. And there's numerous examples out there of townships, municipalities, villages doing that when they need revenue. Where that would get you involved is, yes, they can go up to 10 years, 75%. But what if the developer or the village wants more than 10 years, or they want 100%? Then, and we had a project about 2 years ago off of Canal Road where a developer was looking to build a warehouse that eventually went to Independence. And they did approach us to approve potentially a TIF that would be lucrative, or I must say lucrative, but would provide a lot of additional revenue to the school board, but they were looking for the school board to make a concession and the concession required Board of Education approval. So the terms of the incentive, either a TIF or an abatement, exceeded the threshold where approval was necessary. So in the case of a TIF, we've not been asked to do that, but we could if it was over 75% or 10 years. In the case of Charter Steel and NIDEC, we were asked to approve an incentive that exceeded the threshold, and you and I think for two of you and your predecessors were asked to approve those incentives. And then you're faced with the choice. You know, do you get X dollars but give up Y dollars? You know, and you know, would you not get the X dollars if you didn't give up the Y dollars?
I just wanted to mention that I'm the school board liaison for the Economic Development Committee at Valley View. And there are 4 economic development and projects being talked about right now that ultimately could affect us also. Again, in the discussions, they have always said that the school board would be held harmless and we would still receive our the property tax revenue that we would normally receive.
And the reason is the village would always want to do that. And another reason they would want to do that, 1, it's for good relations. 2 is they don't have to share any then of the payroll taxes. If they hold you harmless, they don't then have to share any of the payroll taxes. Where it can become an issue is project comes up and the developer needs a certain level of assistance, or the village needs a certain level of assistance, and because TIFs can be, the money from a TIF, think of, you know, let's say that over the next 30 years, $500,000 of property taxes will be paid. And let's just say hypothetically, you normally would get half of it, right? So you need to construct a building. You're going to bring your equity, your cash, your equity to the project. You're going to get a loan for the project. But what if that still is not enough? What if you need additional assistance for the project? Well, another source is the TIF. You would then go to the village and say, we need more assistance. And we may even need to take some of the school's money to make this work, because we're going to use 30 years of future revenue and borrow against that to think of a present value calculation where you're going to take 30 years of a stream of revenue and capture that money today to use for your capital stack for a project. And sometimes developers will say, we can't make it work without a school concession. Now, why would a school agree to that? It's because potentially the gain of revenue, that the opportunity is so significant that you will accept the concession of Y to gain X. It's a business decision. But that's not occurred with TIFs in this district.
Thank you, David. That was
Okay.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think, wanted to kind of give a thorough presentation about the tips, and, what David has presented here on his sheet is essentially what's in our forecasts that we have as a note, so we can always keep that fresh in our minds as we go. All right, so, again, look to take a crack at the beginning of the 5-year forecast. Everybody's ready? All right.
Where's your book?
I didn't bring my almanac. Forgot it because I was gone. But, all right, so, pass this out to everybody.
I like it though.
Yeah. Okay. If you want to stay, feel free. Thank you.
Numbers are your thing. It's coming up.
It's good to see you all.
you
Thank you.
again,
Thank
Very
David.
much.
Alright, so. we passed this one too. Perfect. Alright, so we have two handouts that were passed along, and I just wanna, kind of go through where we closed off fiscal year '24 and show where it's at in the 5-year forecast as we go. So this handout that we have here is from our August 7th, 2024 board meeting. And we were recapping fiscal year '24. And we can see that total revenue in the general fund for fiscal year '24 was 18 million. And that's gonna be on line 2.080 of the 5-year forecast. And make sure we're in the column of fiscal year '24. And we can see that that's $18,679,666. And if we look at total expenditures for fiscal year '24, look at line 5.050, in that same column. And that is our $17,768,630 some dollars for total expenditures. Now that gives us a surplus of $911,032 and change. Now that surplus we can see right below on line 6.010. Everybody see that? Awesome. Then below that, we can see our beginning balance that we started on line 7.010, which is $16,431,400 some dollars. And then we add that surplus to that beginning balance. And we ended fiscal year 24 with $17,342,430 some dollars, and that's line 7.020 cash balance. All right, so going to the 5, just kind of taking a broad look at it, and I won't dive too much into the notes tonight, but analyzing just where we're at, we had 3 good years in actuals, fiscal '22, '23, '24. We had a surplus in each of those years on line 6.010, 53,000, 400,000, and most recently 911,000. And even though we do show a deficit going forward, don't panic. This forecast is conservative, so, I'd rather overperform and underpromise than the opposite. Just so we're on the right side of, something breaks, if we have a fire alarm that goes down, or we have a, hillside slide, we're gonna be able to cover something like that. But knock on wood that that's not gonna happen. Yep. And if we look at the very bottom line that we have here, line 15.010, that's our cash balance. That's the cash that we have in the bank to pay our bills. And we can see that we still have a positive balance through all 5 years of the forecast, even though it goes down. And we're a nonprofit entity, we're a public school district. So essentially, we're not, in it to make money and to hoard money. We're, to charge the taxpayers, a certain amount, receive that certain amount, and then use it for, operational expenditures for the school district. And then, if we're looking at a new levy, potentially, in the future, and keep in mind that the levy that we receive, the money, is all rolled up in that very, very first row, top line that we have. But going to the future, we're not talking about a levy until fiscal year 30, 31, 32. And we're, just closing out 24. So fingers crossed that, that's the case, and, we'll take it year by year, and maybe, we look at something else in between, or whatnot, who knows what the future's gonna hold. There could be another pandemic that comes, that changes everything, so. And again, without my almanac from Back to the Future, you can't tell the future. Many respects, so. And then just going through the forecast, kind of quickly. Page 1, no change that we have there, but did want to point out on page 1, the bottom right-hand corner, the little note in my synopsis, that the Department of Education and Workforce examines all 5-year forecast submissions. If the department determines a district has the potential to incur a deficit during the first 3 years of the 5-year period, the district will be required to submit a written plan to eliminate the flag deficits. So what that means is, all 5-year forecasts, the department takes a look at, and if a school potentially gets flagged within those 3 years that they look at, they come out, they knock on your door, and they say, you have to eliminate that in some fashion. So the only way a school can essentially do that is generate revenue or reduce expenditures. Most likely, that's either put a levy on or cut expenses in a different place. And when it gets to that point, it's kind of out of our hands, in the sense that the department says, you must do this, and they're gonna give us a short time frame. So I do know a lot of schools that have been in that situation, and it can be stressful. But good news for us, it's not in our forecast. It's not on our horizon, but just so everybody knows that that is out there by the department, that can happen. All right, if we keep going through, nothing's changed on page 2, but I did want to hit a couple pages as we go, so I'm just scrolling down. And stop at page 9. So if anybody happens to lose their 5-year forecast, don't panic. It's in the notes. It's always here. There's always an embedded copy. And then we go to property taxes. Now, just taking a look at where we're at, and I did want to point out that we have not completed tax year 2024 completely from the county. They have not updated those numbers. I won't have those until the next time we do the 5-year forecast, which is going to be in the spring of 2025. So we'll see those numbers change. Continuing on, at the bottom of page 11, this is the same as it was from the earlier forecast this year. And this is the new levy that was approved back in March. And we can see that fiscal 25, we're going to begin receiving 1/2 of the revenue for that new levy. And we'll receive the full amount fiscal year 26, 27, 28, going forward to the future. And again, that was what was it, Matt? 7?
This is, well, 7 plus 1, so this is only reflecting the 7.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep, and then the 1 mil is going to go to our PI fund that we have in place, so this is just the 7 mils that we have.
Mr. Muccio, just to jump in here, you and I talked earlier today, and thank you for your time. What I wanted to bring out is, and you're probably going to touch upon it, is the idea that the monies that that the district will likely collect from this levy increase are already reflected on which line of the forecast again? I'm sorry.
First one.
101?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Continue on. No changes on 12, no changes on 13. Did want to point out on page 14, that's where we begin to see in that yellow line in the middle, the TIF, tax increment financing that we receive. So that's going to begin making its way through the forecast that we can see. And I'll show everybody where it pops up as revenue into the forecast. Did want to pause on this page real quick and point out on page 14. Look in the middle. See those 2 numbers with the green highlights and then the turquoise blue? So every January I do our tax budget. That has to be submitted to the Cuyahoga County Budget Commission. And I estimate revenue at that point in time. Now, there are changes that occur from January to perhaps now, where we're at. And one of those changes would be, and our legal counsel, David Seed here, sometimes we assess valuations of commercial business, not residential, but commercial business. And sometimes, through that process, the valuation increases. When that happens, revenue increases to the school district through the County Board of Revisions. Now, the County Budget Commission does not go back and redo the numbers for our green number here, the 13.4 million. So I essentially have to kind of adjust see a small amount, which is in the bottom left-hand corner. See the 13,740,000 less the 13,403,000. That 336,000 is a change in our tax revenue collected at 100%. So our valuation increased and our revenue increased along with it. Again, for challenges to commercial property that we have in the district that our legal counsel works on. So that's gonna make its way into the forecast as well. The number to the left with the two magenta numbers, that's actually what we had collected in fiscal year '24. So we can see where those numbers go to the middle section, the 5.1 and the 4.4 that we have in place. So that's actual revenue. Those two amounts add up to the 9.5, and that's gonna be in our roll-up that we're gonna see in a bit for that first line that we had. I'll continue on. And our roll-up's gonna be on page 17. And then we can see there, all these different lines add up to a total, and that total line is gonna be the amounts that we see on row 1.010 of the 5-year forecast. So we have fiscal '22 of $9,387,911 and so forth as it goes. So the very first line that we see in this roll-up is gonna be class 1, residential and agriculture, and class 2, commercial, real property taxes. And then we can see that amount in fiscal '24, which was the amount, those two magenta numbers that added up together, creates that number. And then we see the revenue for the new levy right there, the 1.4, and 336,000 for the Board of Revisions, changes in value decisions. Now, I flatlined the 9.3 million for class 1 and 2 going forward. Now that, again, that number is populated in previous pages, but what I'm essentially doing is saying that I'm estimating our collection percentage is going to be 96%. So that number essentially reflects a 96% collection rate for class 1 and 2. Keep in mind that we collected 98.8 recently. So we've been higher and outperforming. We can actually see in the middle of this page what our history's been. So 98.8, 97.8, 97.7, 97.4, 97.3 rounded, and 96.7. So, estimating at 96%, it's not crazy out there, because it happened back in tax year 2018, at 96.7, a little higher. So it's not, unreasonable to use that number, but we've been outperforming that since. So there's a bubble there, potential revenue that can outperform the forecast. Just right there. Any questions? Okay. The next section, just kind of go pretty fast, we don't have to worry about that, but that's our tangible personal property, no real changes there. State aid, we're receiving a little more in the next line for unrestricted state aid that we see, and that's from the Fair School funding. Restricted state aid, it's kind of flatline, so not too much of a change there. I'm just going fast through it. I do want to talk about line 1.050, state share of local property taxes. And that's going to be on page 33. So if we open at page 33, that begins that line. And again, I always want to point this out, and Matt knows already what I'm going to say. And if we go to the next page, 34, this is our TPP phase-out money, and we can see the chart that we have in place here. So we're in fiscal '25, so we're projected to receive $1,087,451. And just a couple years prior, look at 2022 or 2023's fiscal year, we're getting 1.7 and 1.5. Before that, back in 2018, we're getting 2.5 and 2.3. And then a couple of years into the future, we're going to be getting a 200,000, 20,000, and then 0. So, when we look at our forecast and we see the revenue going down, this is the main contributor for the loss of revenue. So any future levy, and 1 mil generates about 450,000, give or take. So if we're looking at receiving $1 million right year's numbers, that's basically a 3 mil levy right there, just on money that the school district's gonna lose. And it's gonna come sooner than we think. It's, yeah.
We've lost
Matt
six,
wants to point-
yeah, we've lost $16,603, $16,603,872 since the phase-out started cumulatively.
So we just have to keep in mind, there's a baseline here of where we're at today. So going into the future, we know more than likely inflation's gonna happen, costs are gonna rise, right? So that line's always gonna go up. But just to get back to our baseline in the future, we're gonna have to put on pretty much a 3 mil levy, 5 or so years into the future, just to get back there, so.
And that's just to offset the effect of the phase out that you're referring to. Thank you.
Correct, yep. So that's always something that, I want to point out every year in the forecast that, just to get on the record. As we move forward, I do want to touch base on page 36. So at the bottom, we can see our investments that we have in place, and the average yield percentage has been very, very favorable for the past year. It's been over 5%. And we've been pouring the bulk of our money into the highest return that we have in place there. And if I continue down onto page, and then page 38, again, that's the TIF. My chart right there is David had in place. And we keep going to page 39. Take a look at lines 4 and 5. So those are our interest on investments primarily, from Red Tree and Star Ohio. Line 6 is just our operating account if we ever, hit the mark with Huntington, but we don't keep a lot of cash in there. But Star Ohio, we received $39,000 back in fiscal year '22. Red Tree, we received $83,000. And we had, an amount of our funds locked up in CDs. That's when the market with COVID had tanked. But then it slowly started increasing. 600,000 received just from Star alone in fiscal '23. And look at fiscal '24, between 900,000 for Star, 179,000 for Red Tree. We received over $1 million in interest income just for our money sitting in the bank in fiscal '24. Now the hard part is judging where that's going to be in the future. So in this year, I have 500,000. Hopefully we're going to outperform that significantly. But going into the future, I'm very hesitant to put too much of a high amount because it could turn very fast. So I don't want to account for something that has the possibility of swinging to that extent. And going to expenditures, let's hop down there of the forecast. So on page 41, this has been updated with the new collective bargaining agreements, the new negotiated agreements that we have in place. So for chat, we have 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27 in place. There's no agreement after that, so that's when negotiations would come up, fiscal year '28 and '29. That's the same for Chase as well. Just continuing down, the roll-up is going to be on page 46, and that goes to line 3.010, personnel services. This is going to be our highest expenditure line on the 5-year forecast. It always is for pretty much every school that's out there. And it's going to be salaries for all of our staff members that we have in place. And I do want to point out the ESSER positions. Matt, do you want to talk on that, how there's no more ESSER money? There's due roll to the general fund.
Yeah, those, you're talking about with staff members? Yeah, so we had, I think it was part of ESSER 2 and then ESSER 3, right? We had brought on 3 other staff members, and we were paying primarily with the ESSER money their salaries and benefits. Now that that money's gone, those staff members are still present, and so that's something that now is part of the general fund that has to be factored in. That's the difficulty, I think, when you use grant money for personnel, is that when the grant money runs out, you have to make a decision about personnel. And we're in a good spot where we can keep moving on, but we may have to look at you know, in the future as, maybe as people retire, maybe we reflect a little bit on whether it's best to rehire.
Is that something we would have had to vote on or not?
You did.
Did we? Okay.
Yeah, because it was
MTSS.
we had.
Yeah. I know we voted on it when, to use the ESSER money.
Yep.
Also that it now it'll be paid through the general fund.
Well, that's
With
not something you
salaries.
no, that's not something you
No.
voted on.
Yeah, the ESSER funds expired fiscal '24, so
Yeah.
that was the last round of it. Moving forward, benefits, wanted to touch base here. So page 48, bottom half of the page, really wanted to try to organize in an easy-to-read format our benefits that we have in place. So we can see our PPO, medical, and drug, and then our rates back in 2022, 23, and now 24. Below that, we can see our HSA, Health Savings Account, medical and drug. And below that, we can see Delta Dental and VSP Vision. We have our notes all the way to the right, the bucket approach. We talked about that at Suburban Health Consortium. And then the premium rate increases for the past couple of years. We've seen, PPO, medical and drug high, and we've talked pretty much every month about Suburban Health Consortium, so we're all very familiar, what's going on there. HSA has been lower, so we've been really trying to steer more people to go in that direction. And during our open enrollment period, we invite consultants from Anthem as well as Assured Partners from Suburban Health Consortium to come and, just educate our staff more on HSA and the benefits of potentially having HSA. And we also record those on video. And we really do two presentations. We do one here right after school, and then we go across the street to the elementary school, and we do the same one there. So for all of us now.
Mr. Muccio, could you comment generally on the level of participation by our staff, both Chase and Chat members in the HSA plan to this point?
Yep, we have approximately 25 altogether
Okay.
on HSA currently, right now.
And that's out of roughly?
Roughly 110.
Okay, thank you.
Continuing on, we're going to have our roll-up for our benefits on page 51. And our highest row is going to be medical, drug, HSA, dental, vision insurance. So health insurance are the big items that we're going to see there. And I did plan for a 17% increase this year in fiscal year '25, and then a 12% increase the other years. And that's due to the fact, and Mr. Young, Matt, you can speak on this too, where there is talk about a mid-year rate increase from Suburban Health Consortium because currently the cash balance has not increased. And they're essentially operating right now by delaying, working with Anthem to see if they can delay payments because of cash flow, breaking CDs, all in an effort not to increase rates. That's risky. I understand it. But at some point, I think it's just, reality is, there's going to have to be increases. The problem with the mid-year rate increase, it's an accounting nightmare. So, I just wanted to, have something in our back pocket in place for that. But hopefully, the consortium, is able to have lower claims, lower high claims as well. So, we'll keep monitoring that month to month. Any questions as we continue? Purchase services, I won't go too much into those other than everybody take a look at page 57. And on that page, look at line 67. So that's going to be professional services architect. And we have an increase because we are tackling a lot of our capital projects that we have in place. So if anybody inquires as to why we have a spike from one year to the other, we just have in place, 2, 3 projects right now?
That's essentially the two, the hillside and then the fire and security.
So, but you've got $238,200 for the estimate in just those professional services for architects for next year?
Right now,
This year.
Yes, that's where we're at.
We've already approved those, so he's
Yeah.
factoring those in.
Okay.
So, you know, the TIF money comes and the TIF money gets spent right away, so. As we continue, you know, these are the budgets that we use, you know, with our staff. So, you know, our high school principal, Mr. Dietrich, you know, if he's looking for any items for the high school, you know, just direct him here. You know, go look at a 432 object code that you have in place. You know, Matt, you know, I think.
Yeah, this a lot of our
Mhm.
professional development is here. Although we use a lot of grant money for professional development. In fact, primarily, we use grant money for that.
We do. But yeah, the budgets are all here for all of our staff. So I don't want to go, you know, too much into it, nuance, but was there any questions? You know, I think we have a pretty strong forecast, all things being equal, and, you know, we'll continue to monitor it every year. All right.
I just want to say thank you, because I know how hard you've worked on this and how much time you've spent on every single line being accurate. And then just the homework you do and the due diligence and the collaboration, you know, it's impressive what you do, and I'm grateful for the work you've done on it.
Oh, I use those notes on a daily basis, so, you know, I'm constantly going through and just making sure, you know, that, you know, all the numbers tie out and, you know, we're on the right trajectory. We're not, you know, drifting anywhere. Then I'll just hop into my business section.
Okay.
I just have 3 items for approval, items 6A, 7A, and 7B tonight.
Okay, entertain a motion for those items. I'll make the motion. Second, anyone?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dobbins. Any discussion?
Yeah, it's just one purchase order over 5,000, and that's gonna be for the repair of the tower system for the bleachers and the Flip Saunders Gymnasium. That's in the amount of $17,435.
Yeah, so we've been working on, when those bleachers broke, George, what was that, 6 weeks ago? We've worked to get companies in here. We finally did find somebody, but from the time this gets approved, we send this out tomorrow. It's going to take approximately 8 weeks. Yeah, 8 weeks to get the equipment in. And then it's a 3-day project at that. So those bleachers are going to be stuck in their outward position right now until probably January 1st. It might disrupt a physical education class, or it takes away one basket, you know, when you're playing basketball. But I think it's something that we can work around in order to avoid replacing the entire. I mean, the last quote I think we got on the entire was $325,000 to replace the entire gym's worth of bleachers. So 17,000 is reasonable. But it is going to take 2 months. It's just, the bleachers are 50 years old. So it's tough to get custom
Can we
parts.
repair a section of bleachers at a time, or without doing a whole 300,000 worth?
Once you start, so one thing that, when you're repairing, you're grandfathered into some of your ADA compliance, and one thing we know is we are not ADA compliant with 2024 standards. So as soon as we replace a section new, you have to replace all.
Okay.
That's where that, now, that's replacing bleachers. The quote was, if you replace exactly the same structure you have now, you know, maybe we don't need as much seating. Maybe one side could be less seating. It doesn't have to be mechanical. Maybe you could pull them out by hand. So there are different variations of this. Plus, I don't know how much we jumped into what OSC pricing could do for us, because we know that Ohio Schools Council does a lot of work with things like this. So again, that was one estimate for exactly what you have in place. So it's just something we'll look at. But if we can do this repair, we're going to be okay for the short term. Right? I think.
I hate to pay
Yes?
17,000 though, and then replace them next year with something else, you know?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be replacing those in the next year unless we absolutely have to, because we know we've got maybe not the hill, the roof project that maybe has priority over the gym, but it's something we're gonna discuss,
Yeah,
over time.
This extends us out, the useful life, 5 years.
Yeah. We just don't know, right?
Mr. Helber, Mark, we met together to discuss like checking out some schools our size, what do their bleachers look like, what's the cost of that, so it's just start to get the information out so that we could share it out with people and be aware of what potential cost is, and is there a better way to do things? Because one of the big piece of feedback we got from one of the mayors was again, just accessibility for people, we do have an aging population, and there's limited opportunities for them.
There aren't handrails and things like that.
And, that first step's a doozy.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
True.
Yeah, so we're gonna keep looking at it, and if it does become a higher priority, because what we don't wanna do is we don't wanna have a situation where, somebody gets injured because we, aren't, like, we're up to code as long as we don't replace anything, but we're not up to 24 code if we were to replace everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have to do our homework on it, and it's part of our ongoing discussions with facilities.
Anything else? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Soucek?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Section 9, treasurer discussion comments.
Just had 2 quick items. The first one is OSBA Capital Conference, so that's gonna be, what is that, next week?
This
Monday.
weekend.
Yeah, it's coming up. So I sent out an email, a quick reference for everybody. I printed off the badges, everybody should have those. If hotel registration should be good at the Hilton. And then we have our schedules for, if everybody downloaded the app already, I'm sure you guys have. It's pretty useful. And then we have what, Matt? We have, the delegate info, Gary, you're this year.
Yeah.
The Alliance luncheon is Monday, around 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Right.
And then, just November, 2024 5-year forecast. So tonight we did our, presentation of it, and then 2 weeks from now, we'll look to improve. Hopefully. That's all I have for tonight. Thanks.
Okay. I was doing a little, just following up on that comment, I was doing a little bit of research myself, and I looked at the parking, and the rates looked a little high, it looked like it was twice last year, but that's because last year I parked in Gooddale, which is on the other end of the convention center. It's half as much as parking in Hilton. So if you don't mind a 5-minute walk through the building, you don't have to go outside, through the building, you can save $50 for 2 nights.
So you're saying park in the convention center and not in the hotel?
Yeah, cart in the Gooddale lot, which is the north side of the convention center as opposed to the hotel, which is probably just the hotel. And also that the convention parking right next to it is about the same. And as I recall, it gets really crowded. The Gooddale was a little easier to get in and out, fewer cars. So, just a thought. Anything else, Mr. Muccio? Okay, thank you. Moving on to section 10, superintendent's business.
All right, for the consent agenda, we've got 10A, 11A, 12A, B, and C, and I believe that's it. Ask
Okay.
those items to be considered for approval.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for those items, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbins,
Second?
second by Ms. Deca. Any discussion?
Okay, so 10A, this is annually we must approve our gifted identification and service plan. Mrs. Harker, Amy Harker, she's our new gifted coordinator. She has gone through and with her experience and expertise has gotten us up to 2024 operating standards. So she provided that itemized list of the changes. So a lot of what she's doing is trying to make it more readable for our families. She's, again, bringing us up to 2024 standards. She's got some nice flow charts in there. We're going to be using some different assessments that may allow us to identify more students than we have in the past in different ways than we have in the past, not just academic, but also some of those other, because it is gifted and talented, so some of those talented aspects we're going to be looking at. So As well as she's taken the time to make sure all of our forms are going to end up on our website. They're easily accessible for families to find should their children, or should they be interested in gifted testing, or their child identified as gifted. She's done a really nice job of updating us and getting us compliant and legal. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy in the future to have her come in and do a presentation if you would like. Somebody who can talk about this much more expertly than I can. The next item, we're talking 11A. These are our supplemental contracts. So we have just a few for the winter here. We have our boys and girls bowling coach. We have statistician score and assistant wrestling. We have a scorer for high school boys basketball, and then we have cheerleading advisor for varsity and JV basketball as well. So 4 supplemental contracts there. 12A, this is the agreement with Spins Bowling, who we have an annual agreement with. $3,900 is the amount. We paid the same amount last year. Next is the Career Technical Education Partnership Grant opportunity with the Cuyahoga Valley Career Center. Annually, we can receive up to $30,000 because of our partnership for specific allowable purposes. So, if you look at that agreement, you will see that our allowable expenses are Project Lead the Way programming, which we've spent quite a bit of money over Project Lead the Way at all 3 levels, elementary, middle school, and high school, over the years. And we've been grateful for that. We've been able to keep that program up and running, and I think we've replaced all the equipment one full cycle through even. You can do joint instructional projects with us and the Career Center. We're choosing the 3rd, the STEM-based project initiative, which I'll talk about here shortly, and then you can do development and offering of CTE foundational courses, as well as other career-focused activities. So if you recall 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago or last year? 2 years ago, we remodeled the resource room over here at the high school to align with the hotels and recreation program over there. And so we put the kitchen, the bedding, the technology, the air conditioning, everything. We did cabinetry. It's an amazing program, and that supports a program that could be extended then into adult education over at the Career Center for a population of our students. So this year what we're looking to do is revamp a portion of our elementary school media center to become a maker space with a STEM focus. So maker spaces, they've been in vogue for probably a decade, but there are places where students can go in and they can explore. They can explore projects, engineering, research, videography, cinematography, anything that they want to do depending on the level. And so we're going to look at furniture replacement as well as technology. This may very well be a 2-year phased project, but we've already got a markup of what that area could look like over there, and it'll just be a matter of using the funds in the appropriate time should this be approved for that. So we're really excited to put those resources into our elementary school, and grateful for once again for this potential funding partnership with the Career Center. All right, next we have the agreement with Noteworthy Tours. This is proactive planning. You'll notice that this is for 2026. This is not for this coming year. This is going to give us a year to do adequate fundraising and to prep properly for this exciting event to Chicago, March 28th through the 31st of 2026. So last year, if you recall, we went to Nashville. So in 2 years, year and a half from now, they're looking to go to Chicago. So those are the items. Pretty short agenda there.
Okay, any questions?
Mr. Suchaki, I just want to ask you to extend the board's appreciation for the Career Center's ongoing support of the district through this grant program. It's my understanding that it's been going on for many, many years now, and I think since I've been on the board, it's well over $200,000 in the aggregate. So thank you. Please
Right,
extend
even
our
more
gratitude.
since I've been on the board too.
Yes,
Because
of
it's
course.
been the same for the whole time.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, I will
And
pass
the
that along.
administration, wisely using those funds for, consistent with the grant's mission.
Right.
Thank you.
Right, I will pass that along, and one nice thing here, we don't lose out because of our tax base or our size. Every district gets the same amount, so.
Yeah, that we're grateful for. A lot of places will give funding based on enrollment. And so we've always gotten less than everybody else on those types of things. And it's really nice to, we've really done some great things from the first time we did that project Lead the Way Lab back in 2016.
So, okay, I will pass that along, very good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Section 13, 14, I'm sorry, superintendent's comments.
Yeah, I've got a few things for you. So as the election analyses come in, I will provide those updates to the Board of Education because, of course, we're always focused on public education and various impacts. We know that last night, just recently, got an update. 51% of school issues in Ohio passed. That's down from 70% a year ago. So there was a double-digit drop. Of those districts in Ohio that went for new money, which was 28, only 7 out of 28 passed for new money, and that's what we went for back in March. So, you know, we're grateful that people came out and voted last spring, whether they were for it or against it. We're just grateful that the people came out to vote, and it happened to break in our favor. And certainly we had a committee of people. It was a lot of people were invested in that, but last night we saw those numbers really drop as far as school issues in Ohio. So, but I'll provide more updates as I get them. I've got a legal update tomorrow morning. We'll really find out maybe what some of the directions of things are going to go. We know there's going to be some lame duck bills that are going to be passed that are going to affect some things in a very short term. For example, Senate Bill 29 and the notification process. We expect to get some relief on that because there's going to be a big burden on school districts as well as families receiving those notifications if it's implemented as it currently states. Couple good things, right? We've got Nuts coming up, the first grade play musical. That's tomorrow. Mrs. Prowse will be there. It's a big day. Yeah,
What time
I'm
is
sure-
it, 11?
11 o'clock. I'm sure you've been rehearsing. You probably already know the
Very
songs.
soon.
It's, I'll tell you, one of the great things is the students who have study hall at that time will come down and they will sit and listen and they start singing along these songs because our elementary folks, I know that's Mr. Bertoloni and Mrs. Curry and then the first grade team, do great things with our students over there. We also kick off parent-teacher conferences tomorrow and then into Friday, and I think the elementary goes another round next week as we're fast and furious into the second quarter of the year already. Football team won last week, so we got playoff football this Friday night. I want to wish good luck to the coaches and the players, as well as to our band and our Red Rubies and our advisors and all the families who are going to travel to. We're going to West Branch, is that right? West Branch, Berlin,
Berlin.
I think is where we're.
Is it called or just Berlin?
It's Western Reserve at.
Western Reserve, Berlin, Highland, maybe.
I thought it was Berlin Center. but
Yeah,
maybe
it's
Western
heading out east, and just be careful. In all seriousness, the deer are running, and you will see deer as you head to that part of the state of Ohio. So be careful driving at nighttime.
See plenty of roads around here. Just coming down 17 on the way to the meeting, I had to come to a near dead stop. Sorry.
Winter sports are already up and running, so it's exciting to see that phase of the school year as we hit that 1/3 of the year. We hit into winter sports. Veterans Day's next week. We of course want to thank all of those who have served in the past, all those who are currently serving in their capacity, and we know we've got an assembly over at the elementary school, and Mr. Detre is actually putting together something here at the middle school and high school as well to honor our veterans. We have best committee meeting 1 week from tonight on 11/13 right here in the media center. Of course, OSBA is coming up next week. George and I are presenting with Bob McBride from Ennis Britton on the 12th. That's the Tuesday. We're doing it's part this last year. It was that AI writing generators, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this year we got selected again, but it's part of their legal block of professional development. So Bob McBride is taking a much larger role in this because it's fulfilling their there's continuing education hours for those in the law, realm. So we just hope we don't get ourselves in trouble with any attorneys there with some of the AI stuff that we were going to present. But it's an honor to be able to present and represent Cuyahoga Heights for a second year in a row. Next week is NHS and JHS inductions. That's on Thursday night. And I see here in the media center we've got the middle school book fairs coming back with our PTO. And I really have to just give a big shout out to our PTO. They have been so actively involved last year and then into this year, and they have all kinds of subcommittees that have different projects going on. And it's just great to see that they now have a presence back over here in the middle school, and hopefully someday it ends up back in the high school. I think that's about everything. I could keep talking because there's just so much to celebrate. I had 3 students. I had Aaron Decca, Yurika Tangri, and Arushi Shendi, who received the governor's merit scholarships, $5,000 if they stay in state. So that's something that came out of the last budget bill, that 35 to 40% of Ohio's best and brightest high school students leave the state of Ohio, and trying to incentivize them to stay in the state. If they do stay in state, they will receive a one-time $5,000 scholarship. No pressure, but it's a nice honor to at least have that option should you choose it. And certainly we would love for folks to stay in Ohio, but I understand the call to leave home, spread your wings and fly. So, there's just so many great things that we could talk about with our kids that we're so proud of and our staff. So, but I'll stop right there because I know we've got board policies coming.
Well, you're going to stop, and we're going to move on to section 15, board policy, and I'm turning it right back to you.
Okay, so I will do my best to summarize these. I don't want to take any more time than we need to, because these have been posted since last Friday, and they will continue to be part of the next agenda because this is simply a first reading. We have 44 board policies that got released on October 22nd. And as I said, some of those policies might actually get revised in the lame duck session, for specifically those around Senate Bill 29. But the first 14 that you see, all right, that's policy 100, 142.1, 151, 152, 155, 163, 164, 165, 165.1, 165.2, 166, 167.2, 167.7, and 173. These are all under our bylaws. So these are essentially how we implement board policy, how we implement board meetings, how we run board meetings, how we post agendas for board meetings, definitions that are used throughout board policy. There's been a complete revamping of this, and you're going to notice, I think 6 of those policies just simply say, because they are making some modifications, they have to do some cross-reference adjustments with other policies. They're looking to update some of the wording, the definitions, the vocabulary, as well as consistency. I think that's a big thing, consistency and ease of implementation and use. 3 of those policies are being rescinded, which means they are coming off of the books. That would be policy 165.1, policy 165.2, and policy 173, and that's because those policies, the language is being either interjected into new policies, or they're simply, the wording is moving to a different policy. You've got 5 of those policies of the 14 are being revised. 2 are simply just being renumbered. They're no longer going to be, where is it here? Where's the renumbering as an example? 167.2, that's just a renumbering. It was bylaw 160. It's being renumbered to 167.7. You got 2 that are technical corrections, which simply means that they need to cross-reference a different policy now. And then 2 are actually new policies. So I think as I go through this, the The 100 is about definitions. The 142.1 is about how the oath of office is administered, which we've done that with the treasurer, and those proceedings. 151 is specifically about the organizational meeting, which is going to be coming up here in, believe it or not, about 10 weeks, 2 months. 152 is just a revision about who the officers are. One of the things we've seen is that there's no role of secretary anymore, and that's because the treasurer is the one who keeps the minutes, and so there's no need to have a specific secretary with the Board of Education. 155 is a technical correction regarding the presiding officer. Same with 160. Same with 163. Meeting notices, that's 164, being revised, just reflecting current practice. 165, just about board meetings. This is a new policy. They're bringing together some of those rescinded policies into this one policy. 166, I do want to talk about it. 166, that's about agendas. And Mr. Dobbins, you had asked me to call legal counsel to get a little bit more information about that. First of all, I want to say that the way we've been conducting our consent agenda is proper. All right, we have been providing notice of our board meeting on Fridays before the board meeting, more than 2 days, business days prior. All right, think about calendar days, it's about 4 calendar days prior. There's an opportunity for the public to review every single item that's on there. When the consent agenda is presented, even before that, there's an opportunity for us to pull items off of the consent agenda. Even after we are doing this hybrid model where we just generally present what's on there, but then go into the specifics, there's still the opportunity before you vote on it to pull something off, or to get clarification, or to ask questions, or for members of the public to provide some type of feedback on anything that's on that consent agenda before you actually vote upon it. So that part's good. There was a recent settlement, Ames versus Columbus City School District, case number 2024-Ohio-3411, which may be feeding into this policy. Now, Mr. Britton and Mr. McBride were going to contact Neola to get a little bit more clarification on some of the, if you see this, what we have recommended, especially, Matt, if you scroll down to, as it talks about purposes for a consent agenda, letter F said other. And that's where we had the question is, do we need to provide specifics? Do we need to provide generalities? Or if we don't provide anything at all, are we in compliance with a consent agenda? And so they had asked to do a little bit of homework on this for us. So it may be possible that at the next meeting, rather than adopting this policy, you may be getting a revised version of this policy based on the recommendations we received, just simply because we want to make sure that we are above board and doing our consent agenda properly. So, Mr. Dobbins, I wanted to make sure that I followed up with you on that one, because you had inquired about it. It was great to know, because what I found out was, I think there's several law firms that contribute to Neola, but Ennis Britton, they were not part of the updates for the bylaws. And so they have some questions now about, well, why weren't we consulted, and exactly why are these changes? Because they have clients who want to make sure these bylaws are accurate, and that we are choosing accurate choices based on our needs. But the good thing is we've been doing everything properly.
Yay.
So that's a good thing. I actually liked how we do take the time. The only thing that makes what we do different from a regular meeting is that our consent agenda, we only vote one time, as opposed to presenting every item and voting on every single item one at a time.
Or we reserve the option to do so.
Always.
Got it.
And he's even going to provide some feedback on, well, what items you could have them be part of a consent agenda, but maybe it's better if they're not part of a consent agenda, just so that they're given their own proper space. So, for example, a negotiated agreement is a good, is something good to have separate. Or if you have a $500,000 project for a hillside or a fire alarm system, maybe that should not be part of a consent agenda, so that you can give it its due scrutiny, for better or for worse. And so it's just to consider maybe a little bit more deeply whether something should be part of that consent agenda or whether it should receive its own line item. So good advice, and we'll continue to work to do things properly.
Well, thanks to you and Mr. Britton for the work that you're putting into this.
Absolutely. A few more policies here. So policy 4120.08, this is employment of personnel for co-curricular, extracurricular activities. And this also connects with policy 4121, criminal history record check. Ohio's background check system is called RAPBAC. So every individual who has a license that works with students like teachers and aides, substitute teachers, they all have to enroll in the RAPBAC system automatically to get that license to work with children. This past year, in fact, it was effective, I believe, November 1st, and maybe there's an extension to November 15th. Bus drivers are required to now be in the RAPBAC system, as well as the way we've gotten interpretation from it, anybody who works regularly with children. So if that is a secretary or administrative assistant, or that could be a cleaner. It could be, who else do we have? Custodial staff, kitchen staff. Anybody who may regularly work with children and active children have to enroll in the RAPBAC system. But bus drivers had a hard deadline. It might have been November 15th. Yeah, it was the first, then they gave us a 2-week extension. So these policies are referencing the RAPBAC, which is simply our background check system. All right. We're fortunate we have that system here. We're able to do those right here on site. 5131, this is about student transfers.
Sorry, Mr. Young,
yes.
can we go back to this one real quick?
Absolutely.
I saw this about the pupil activity program permit.
Mhm.
Do all of our coaches and extracurriculars,
They all have to receive.
They've been doing it for years.
okay,
And it's always a process, 'cause they have to have those in place, one to be coaching kids, and then two, so the district would pay them. 'Cause he's
Okay.
not committed to pay them if they don't have it.
And I think it was I think it was 2 years ago that volunteers also had to get the pupil activity permits, and so we had updated several policies that included volunteers, and so that's why you'll see when we're board approving volunteers, we're complying with the policy as well as ensuring that they are going to be a volunteer. They have to get the background check, as well as, not background check, the pupil activity permit, as well as some other professional development requirements, a concussion test they have to do.
I've seen that one before.
Aaron's Law, I think,
Yes.
is one that you have to do.
That, Lindsay's Law.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen
yeah,
that.
not Aaron's Law. Aaron's Law, I'm going way back, guys. I'm going back 10 years, 12 years now.
So before we've approved them, they're on the list of the they've
Or
already
they
done
have,
this
or
stuff?
they have to go get that pupil activity permit before they are technically permitted to be working with.
The state's made it a lot
Children.
easier, so they have a whole platform now for coaches to be able
Yep.
to do it. Back when Mr. Young and I used to coach, we'd go to sessions to go sit in for a
Mhm.
couple hours and kind of bounce around and do things. So now it's like all in one place where they can go through all the training.
We purchased that professional development license, I think, that allows our folks to be able to get all of their requirements in one system, so we enroll them into that.
Okay,
Yeah, good question.
thank you.
It's the student transfer, this is connected to House Bill 147 that says this is for athletic eligibility. Should a child or a student be a victim of abuse, it permits them to transfer their athletic eligibility, meaning they do not have to sit out 50% of a season. And right now, it's 50% of the second half of the season, so when students transfer and don't meet eligibility requirements, they miss second half of the next season plus the playoffs. This would allow students to transfer without losing that eligibility. 5136 is related to House Bill 250. So if you recall, the governor said by July 1st of 2025, every school district has to have a cell phone policy in place, which technically all school districts had cell phone policies in place before the governor said that we had to have one in place. But this, what it does is it actually just gives us a little bit more backing that, when we are enforcing these things, and we have we have stricter guidelines, kindergarten through 8th grade, than we do in the high school. But this should align with that, as well as clarify certain uses of these devices for students with IEPs or 504s who require this assistive technology or these personal communication devices as part of their plan. 5136.0 on electronic equipment. This is connected to, as will be policy 5780, Senate Bill 29. And again, we're going to adopt this, and as soon as we adopt it, we may actually end up getting a revised version. Revisions are expected to potentially be available at the end of November or early to mid-December. We won't have to wait till the beginning of the year. But these are specific to the notifications, the monitoring of the devices, and the notifications. Like I said, it has to occur within a certain number of hours for the allowable reasons. 5200 has to do with attendance. Specifically, so House Bill 214 said that students can be excused 3 days for religious expression. The Department of Education and Workforce will be posting a list of recognized holidays based on all the different religions. Where it gets really difficult with religion and ideology, everybody thinks that religion is Christianity or Judaism or is Islam, but it can also be things that are on the other extreme of things. You know, if somebody chooses to worship something that's not as pleasant as well. So, if somebody wants to worship the devil or something like that, that actually falls underneath this policy. So, religion is religion, whether it's for good or evil. So, but what this means is that students, should they take these religious expression days, those hours that they're gone, those days that they're gone cannot count against their attendance. 5500 student conduct. This is around artificial intelligence and academic honesty or dishonesty. Next meeting we'll have a completely different policy just on artificial intelligence, but we're really treating AI as we would any other technology or any other assignment. It's going to be pretty much managed at the classroom level. All right, it's difficult to say that AI is never going to be used because it's used all the time. If you ever typed a paper and mistyped a word and it wants to correct your word for you, that's a form of artificial intelligence. And if you've used Grammarly or anything like that, that's artificial intelligence. So we'll have a lot more headway on what this looks like in the future, but we're just not there yet. As I mentioned, 5780 is in relation to the notifications, the requirements to post all of our softwares on our website, which you can find under the technology page. If you go to departments, on the main page, you can see all the different, I believe we have approximately 120 different softwares that we use here in the district. 6220, this gets into the financial side, so we got 3 to go here, we're almost done. So 6220, this is just budget preparation. Matt, I don't know if you want to jump in on any of these. There were 2 different versions. We went with the simple version as opposed to the detailed version, which kind of matched what our current policy already was. It basically gives the treasurer authority to make different decisions about the budget preparation, correct?
Yeah, it's following pretty much what we do right now, so.
Yeah, there's just some new law, what you see there in we had to, all that, anytime you see it highlighted like it is, that means it's new language based on new law. 6320, this is the purchasing and bidding. So Senate Bill 168 increased the threshold for new competitive bidding from $50,000 to $75,000 and then increase 3% every year after that. So it's adjusting for inflation. So you'll notice that under limitations that Matt has it pulled up right there, we had a discussion just when we did an agenda review as to whether that we should stick with, right now, any purchase over $5,000 requires board approval. We know that, so like for example, the bleacher repair, but when we got that first quote, we knew we had to wait 2 weeks, because we received it right after the last board meeting, we could not expedite that process because it's $17,000. If that threshold were $20,000, then purchases that are, below that would not require board approval. However, I recognize that there was a history of, with the history of the school district, that the $5,000 threshold has been put into place for a reason, and we're fine to do whatever the board recommends here, whether that's stick with the $5,000, increase it to $10,000, or something else. So, but that latitude is there. I thought I would just give you that background. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that, but I know.
I did during our board agenda, and I like it at 5,000. I think that, I don't know, I think we'll be more in tune with the expenses of the district, knowing what they are.
That's perfectly acceptable. That's what we've been living under, so it's not going to be anything that we haven't been used to. We can continue to do.
Great.
Okay, perfect. And then the last one for tonight, 6460, this is vendor relations. Again, this is Senate Bill 29. This is the scrutiny that has to be given to any contract that we receive when technology is involved, student data, personally identifiable information is involved. And it's strongly, strongly, strongly recommended by every lawyer generating business that I've talked to that these contracts, and all contracts actually, should be scrutinized by your legal counsel before approving them. Specifically to these that are really going after your big tech, ensuring that our students' data is safe and secure. So that's what 6460 is about. So you had three policies directly connected to Senate Bill 29 that went into effect on October 24th. And that's where we stopped. So we still have a few more to do next time, but this was all we could take. We spent 3 hours modifying the ones that we did, and that was enough.
Plus that we used the entire alphabet, so I guess we have to stop.
I did. Like when we put AA on there, I'm like, okay, with the double letters, we're done.
Yeah.
We went all the way to Z, if you count the overview. So that's for the first reading. We'll do this again in 2 weeks.
Thank you for going through that and helping us understand it. That's much appreciated. By the way, one of those shows that we're going to have to change our wording at the beginning of the board meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Are we able to expand beyond that to include some of the thoughts that we currently have?
You can always do more. You just can't do less.
Can't do less, okay.
Yep.
All right. We'll have to sit down and talk about that
Yep.
a little bit. Okay, moving on to section 16, board comments, committee reports. Anybody? I have just a couple little things. I would like to thank Maria and George for being at the All Boards Dinner at the Career Center. I hope you enjoyed it. This food was delicious. It always is. And the board meeting following that dinner was very short. I don't know how else to say it. It was, I think, the shortest meeting we've ever had. I think it was less than half an hour. It really went quickly. We did have a groundbreaking. You probably saw that in the news letter that I forwarded to you. The reason I was in those pictures, we had pictures of the board members, so of the 9 board members, only 3 of them were there for the groundbreaking, so we all got our picture in that. So, nothing actually nothing else going on at the Career Center at the moment, not out of the ordinary, so I don't have anything else. Anybody else? Nothing? Okay, moving on to 17. Anybody have any future agenda items? Hearing none, moving on to 18, informational items. It should be noted, Board of Education members received their agendas several days prior to the actual meeting and have had time to study and ask questions and so on. Upcoming regular meetings for the balance of this calendar year, November 20th at 7 and December 11th at 6. Okay, if there's nothing else to come before the board, may I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbin,
Second.
second by Ms. Zetter. I assume there's no discussion. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter.
Aye.
Mrs. Deco.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. It is 7:45 PM and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.